to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about lipid replacement therapy. So, this is something to consider when you're on the fertility journey, and your fertility clinic, maybe if you have elevated NK cells, may have recommended intralipid therapy to you. And so, we're going to be talking about the differences, why considering lipid replacement therapy may be right for you when you are on the fertility journey, especially if you are dealing with autoimmune disease as well. If you have infections, which we see a lot of gut infections, if you have infections, or if you have mitochondria dysfunction, which can be issues with egg health. So excited for you to listen to today's episode. Let's go. Hey, Dr. Carolyn, excited to have you back on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Today we're going to be talking about lipid replacement therapy. First of all, let's talk about, well, what exactly is that, and how would you see that helping someone on the fertility and pregnancy journey?
So lipid replacement therapy, basically what you're doing is you're replacing the lipids that are in all of your cell membranes and what we call the organelles inside of your cells. So a lot of people know what mitochondria is. So the mitochondria is one of the big ones that mitochondria, it runs all the energy in your body, keeps everything kind of on track. And the other thing that a lot of these things do is they keep your DNA from getting damaged and from making proteins wrong. So you need those little organelles. That's what they do. They're these little bitty guys inside of your cells, and all of them are made out of lipids. So actually, technically, what's called phospholipids. So all of that stuff is made out of phospholipids. And where do you think we get those lipids? You get them mostly from your diet. And for a lot of us, we don't eat, honestly, the best diet. And especially after the whole low fat replacement, the getting rid of coconut oil, this all goes back 50, 60, maybe 70 years. So most of the lifetime of the people that we're talking to today, that they've really been on this fat replacement thing where they took the saturated fats like beef fat, duck fat, coconut oil, and they replaced them with seed oils. And the problem with seed oils is that they sit around on the shelf and they get rancid. They go in your body and they get rancid because they're not a saturated fat. So they have little openings available for things to do things to them. So I was reading an email yesterday, and he was talking about oxygen. So oxygen, obviously we need oxygen for our body, but one of the things that happens to the fats in our cells is they get oxidized, meaning that they create a reactive oxygen species, which causes a lot of trouble in our bodies and may even impact your fertility, your ability to gain muscle, your ability to process fat properly in your body. So when we switched over to all those seed oils, we also set ourselves up for some other kinds of health problems that we didn't have before. And so what lipid replacement therapy does is it takes those rancid, oxidized fatty acids out of your cells and replaces them with healthy fatty acids.
Yeah, sorry, just the canola oil and the safflower oil and the
right
grapeseed and like all those different vegetable oil.
Unfortunately, like even avocado oil, which avocado oil is like the paleo, love oil, and even avocado oil can go rancid.
Literally.
And the other thing is, if you use oil to fry things, then it oxidizes in the frying pan. Mm-hmm. So when you're eating things that are deep fried or fried in very hot fat, when it gets to the smoke point, then you're actually running into problems with the fat being oxidized.
Yeah, I tried to switch over to like the duck and the tallow and the lard for cooking. So I was doing the coconut oil, which then that can be, well, it has a higher smoke point, but still that can still cause issues. And then obviously you don't want to cook with olive oil, but putting that on afterwards, which when you find some really good olive oil, that's nothing beats that. But then also I was doing some of that, some of those vegan butters, which, you know, as we
I
move
know.
away, right? As we move away from dairy, and then I can't even like the ghee, or I can't really tolerate that. Because the
Right.
clarified butter and stuff like that. And it's so, you know, I'd like to do the grass-fed butter. Although it's interesting when I head off to Europe and have dairy there, I'm totally fine because, you know, maybe it's
Hmm.
more in its raw form instead of pasteurized. And then come over here and yeah, I can't even do the grass fed butter. It just doesn't work with me. And then you're stuck with those other ones. So now I'm just doing olive oil and everything.
I know. I'm not gonna lie. I have like 4 jars of duck fat in my refrigerator.
Yeah, yeah. I got the duck fat too. I
And
just did that
I
for
do
lunch.
okay with grass fed butter, but I've been noticing you have to be really careful with the grass fed butter now because if you read the label very carefully, one of the ones that I loved that I used to buy all the time now says on the very bottom of the label up to 90% grass fed, which means they're finishing that that cow that the cow might have access to the pasture, but that cow is eating grain and cows are not made to eat grain.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so, yeah, so some of these things they can help with, I guess, if anyone there's mold issues or people have Lyme or EBV,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
chronic fatigue or
Mhm.
fibromyalgia, also autoimmune. We see a lot of people on the fertility journey with either
Mhm.
celiac, Hashis, MS, rheumatoid arthritis. And then we've done some podcast episodes on the mitochondria, yeah, like the powerhouse of the cell. So,
Mhm.
you know, and then if you got poor egg quality, is it really poor mitochondrial health? So, um,
Right.
it's people who could benefit from. So let's talk about kind of like how. So in some IVF clinics, they're offering this intralipid
Mhm.
therapy. How does this? How does the what we're talking about here with the lipid replacement? How does that differ?
So the intralipid is made from soybean oil, and then they add some egg and they add some glycerin, and so that right there you're fraught with some difficulty because this is a pharmaceutical product. It's not made from non-GMO soybean oil. It's not made from a good source of glycerin. So it very well may be the glycerin may even be from petroleum products because that is one of the ways to make glycerin. So, so you don't know where they're getting and they actually what they use is something called glycerol. So that's glycerin with an alcohol added onto it. So you don't know where that came from. The egg definitely isn't going to be some beautiful free range organic, happy chicken egg. It's just egg. So you're talking about something that's a fairly low quality product. The studies actually for intralipid don't look bad. I think it does make a difference for some people. And a lot of the fertility clinics are offering it, although many of them are up leveling the price to a point that can be quite ridiculous for people. And even with what I do with my lipid replacement, I use phosphatidylcholine. You can do IV phosphatidylcholine. And for some people, that's going to be the best recommendation. There's a lot of places that you can go and get an IV phosphatidylcholine. You want to, again, be careful about where they get that phosphatidylcholine, who made it, what's it made from. Some of the pharmaceutical companies make better quality and some don't make as good quality. So what you want if you're going to use a phosphatidylcholine, which is what the usual recommendation is for the IV, is you want something that's been very highly purified. There should be no soy protein at all in your phosphatidylcholine. And hopefully it's been tested. And the other thing that we recommend is that the phosphatidylcholine has been tested for glyphosate, also known as Roundup. So you don't want those things in your phosphatidylcholine because you're trying to replace your lipids with something good. You don't want to be throwing that stuff in there.
Glyphosate.
So,
It's like, yeah, we're always trying to stay away from that, which seems to be sprayed everywhere, right?
oh my
Um,
God, I watched, I forget her name. There's a woman who she teaches very specifically about glyphosate. And I was listening to her talk last week, and she was saying that even for people who eat like super organic, it's in everything. It's in our water. It gets contaminated into the organic plants. and a lot of companies don't test for it. So they did a study of people who ate, I think, nobody eats 100% organic. I know I don't. I try, but it's almost impossible to eat 100% organic. There's just some things that are not available organic, or some things that say they're organic but aren't. That you're definitely getting a mixed bag. So, but they looked at people who are, I think, 90% organic eaters, and they tested them for glyphosate in their urine, and every single one of them was positive. So we don't want to be putting a soy product into our body, whether we're eating it or we're putting it in IV. We don't want to be putting something in that's got glyphosate in it. So definitely recommend that any product that you use has been tested to not have soy protein and glyphosate.
Yeah, it's like the groundwater, I believe, right? Because it's like you want to do as much as possible the dirty dozen, making sure those ones, especially the strawberries, got the most pesticides as we're recording this, heading to strawberry season here in the East. And it's interesting with the strawberries because we get ours shipped from out west there, and sometimes they can just be like white inside. I'm like, what's the benefit of the strawberry? And kind of back to eating with the seasons again, right? As each thing is available, and not eating strawberries in January.
Strawberries in January either came from South America or they were grown in a greenhouse.
Right. Yeah.
Although here in Florida, we do grow strawberries, and we do start to have strawberry season here started probably a month ago.
Okay. Yeah. Ours is usually June. So yeah. Okay. And so we're doing some of this, intralipid therapy there at the clinics, the fertility clinics, typically for the NK cells, the natural killer cells. So then if someone has had recurrent pregnancy loss, this can help to reduce those. Obviously we've also clinically seeing, and there's some studies talking about with the, basically you want to reduce all inflammation and reduce inflammation in the body as much as possible, and doing the elimination diet and the autoimmune protocol, sort of really, to look at that and then fine tune it with food sensitivity testing, and then looking at the health of the gut microbiome, all that piece in conjunction. So it's not just about, the intralipid therapy and then pounding down a cheeseburger. So, and
exactly.
And so this one is like saying, like, they're deactivating the natural killer cells, and they're seeing some positive, but yeah, like we were saying kind of before we got on here, and you just mentioned that some of this can be like cost prohibitive, where, like, I don't know, somehow when they got fertility attached to it, there seems to be an additional price tag, often because there's insurance involved, and then it's pharmaceuticals.
There's liability. There's there is all of that. I'm not for in no way am I saying that people shouldn't be able to charge what they think something's worth. But I think that if I were going to do something like Intralipid, I would probably have mine made, because I think that you can get better quality products than what the pharmacies are providing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like if that's recommended for someone here listening, like there's you can look at these things, but then making sure you're testing the quality of what's going into your own body. And then have you considered other things for recurrent pregnancy loss too, not just like focusing on the NK cells and then pumping your body full of stuff. So yeah, I've done lots of podcast episodes on pregnancy loss, and we can look at it from a functional standpoint. Okay, so let's talk about that phospholipid. Here we go. Phosphatidylcholine during the prenatal period in pregnancy. What are we seeing there? Is it safe to use that?
So it is actually not only safe, but it looks like the studies show that it might be really beneficial, that it may improve both the egg quality, and in men, don't forget that men are part of this equation. So if you're going to do lipid replacement, it should be both partners. For men, it improves the sperm quality. For women, it improves the egg quality, and it improves as well the uterus quality. So when they looked at that, they found, they were concerned, obviously, that we're always looking at like what's going to be safe for pregnant women. And when they looked at phosphatidylcholine, the studies look really good. There is admittedly nowhere near enough science out there for anybody to say this is the way to go. But I think that the early science definitely shows that it's advantageous and definitely not dangerous. Now, again, that's when we're talking about a good quality phosphatidylcholine.
Yeah.
So, and then, sorry.
Go ahead.
So the other thing is that, like, when we're looking at lipid replacement, we're not just using phosphatidylcholine. We are starting with something that's called phosphatidylcholine, but that phosphatidylcholine, when it gets into your body, is going to break down into phosphatidylethylamine, phosphatidylserine, and a couple of other breakdown products that are all involved in that lipid, in replacing those lipids in the membranes. So, and especially phosphatidylserine is great for brain development. So after you do get pregnant, you want to be able to have that present in the body. And you can take, I guess, just phosphatidylserine, but the real benefit here is if you take the phosphatidylcholine, your body takes that up right out of the stomach, and it's going to put it directly into the cells. And one of the other super cool things about it is that as it brings those old rancid oils out of the cell, because your body prefers those better oils. It much prefers those fatty acids, and it will take those up and put them right away into the cell. So what's happening is when you take those up, it's getting rid of the old rancid cells. And what's going with those a lot of times is heavy metals, toxins. We do see that people, like you said, people who do lipid replacement, some of the people that have had real benefit from it is mold people with Epstein-Barr. The company that I've been working with, Body Bio, they were originally started by the grandfather of the current owner, and he did it for his own chronic fatigue syndrome. So that was always their intention when they created that company and when they created this protocol.
Yeah, I'm taking I think their butyrate right now.
Mm-hmm. Their butyrate's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a new fish oil out too that's made from caviar.
Oh.
Technically, it's herring roe. But if you look at the data, the caviar is one of the has less heavy metals in it than a lot of the other oils. So, and it's been hard to get really good quality fish oil lately. So,
yeah,
so they have that. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, it can help with type 2 diabetes risk too. What are you seeing there?
Mm-hmm.
Anything you wanted to bring up on that one?
So I think the thing about it is really what it's doing is it's replacing the membranes in the cells with better fatty acids. And the benefit of that is that your cell basically has to take up everything that it needs through the cell wall. If that cell wall is made out of junky, crappy cement and terrible bricks, then you're not getting as good, everything comes in, everything goes out, nothing stays where it's supposed to. The whole point of the cell wall is that it's supposed to allow for specific things to go in a certain way. And it's interesting because we always believed that the cell wall was just a bilayer, it was just 2 layers of these phospholipids. But what we're finding is that in between those 2 layers, there's all these little proteins that come in off of those fatty acids. All those phospholipids have little attachments that then things can attach to. So it's really the cell wall isn't just like these 2 layers out here and they're independent of each other. They're kind of all working together to get it to work properly. And if there's not good fatty acids in there, and especially because the problem with rancid fatty acids is that they get very stiff. So instead of having that nice flexible cell wall and that nice flexible mitochondrial wall, and the other one that I know this is going to get a little scientific, but there's another one called the endoplasmic reticulum. And the endoplasmic reticulum, what they found was that if it had rancid oils in it, it tended to be kind of scrunched up and unhappy and just sort of sitting in the cell and not really doing as much as it's supposed to. When you give it the right lipids, so they looked at them after a phosphatidylcholine infusion. So this was IV. What it did was it just like opened up, it bloomed, and it became this big thing that kind of took up almost all the cell doing what it's supposed to do. And one of the things that the endoplasmic reticulum does is it moves things from the outer cell wall into the nucleus. So that's its major job. And it's a pretty sophisticated little transit. It's not just like a little highway that the cars run through. It's very sophisticated in how it manages everything. And it also has a big impact on your DNA being healthy. So obviously, if we want to get pregnant, we want all that DNA to be super healthy. We want all those mitochondria to to be working properly. And then we also want to allow the baby to have the best nutrition that it can get from the mother's body.
Yeah, like you're saying about that, like the well, the gut wall and the gut barrier there, so that can when there's permeability there, you've got excess food allergies or food sensitivities, and then irritable bowel, people having, we've got many people with low AMH and are high FSH, diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, and they're
Right.
alternating between, constipation and diarrhea. So things going on with the stool. Anything you want to share there?
Well, one of the things that happens is there's a molecule called lipopolysaccharide, and it's broken down from little bits and pieces, usually of bacteria, and it's toxic to your body. It doesn't like it. And normally, lipopolysaccharide is supposed to go through your gut and out. But what happens when you have permeable gut, when it's not working properly, when the cells are not doing what they're supposed to do, and you get these gap junctions in the colon wall and the bowel wall, that lipopolysaccharide can get out into the tissue. And especially if it goes to the brain, it can cause brain fog. It can cause memory problems. It probably is implicated in Alzheimer's, although we don't have a direct correlation that we're seeing just yet. I think that what they're going to find is that all this crazy diet that we've been having people eat, which is supposed to be healthier for people, is actually causing some of these issues that we're having. We're seeing increased people, increased numbers of neurodivergent people. We're seeing increased numbers of people with memory issues very early in their, in age. And I think we're seeing those things because of our poor diet. So there's definitely, like you said, in addition to doing the lipid replacement, you want to make sure that you're not like beating it out by eating rancid fats, a lot of fried foods. You want to make sure that you're eating a healthy diet while you're doing it, and you want to avoid the seed oils and frying things.
And then, so what are some tests that can help to decide who's going to benefit from the lipid replacement therapy?
So where you can start. So I forgot all about talking about this, but there's a lot of people will talk about the omega-6, omega-3 balance. And so I think a lot of people know that they're supposed to get more omega-3, and that what they've been told is omega-6 is the bad guy and omega-3 is the good guy. It's just not that simple. You actually need a certain balance between your omega-6 and your omega-3, and you actually need more omega-6 than omega-3. So what you want is the best quality omega-6 that you can get, as well as the best quality omega-3 that you can get. So a good initial test is just really to even look at the omega balance. So that one's pretty easy. Most of the labs have that one. Your insurance usually covers it. It's often included in a pregnancy and a prenatal screening. So that's just an omega-6, omega-3 balance. There's a newer test that's now being offered by, I think it's Quest, that's called the Omega Quant, OMEGAQUANT. And that one looks at a little bit more than just the omega-6 to omega-3. So it's also looking at the DHA and the EPA. So those are blood tests that can be done really at any lab. Almost all of them have some similar, something like that. If you want to get more detailed on what's going on with the fatty acids, there is a test that's available through Genova. That one usually is not covered by insurance, although sometimes I know with Genova, sometimes you are able to get your insurance to cover it. It just depends on your insurance. So Genova has a fatty acid test that they're offering now that looks at a very detailed report of the fatty acids. So that's a pretty good test. And that one runs about, I want to say in American money, probably $300 if you had to pay cash for it. Then there's a really super fancy test that's run by a special lab. I have access to that one through BodyBio. So I have a practitioner's account with them. And through BodyBio, you can order that test. They send it out to the company. And then when you get the results back, you send it to BodyBio and they give you the report, because the report from the lab doesn't really tell you anything. You need what BodyBio does is they run that the data that they get from that report through their software, and then come up with all a report that makes sense to people. So, and that one runs about $500. And then if you really, 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 really want to go down the rabbit hole with this, especially if you've had a lot of trouble getting pregnant, you're trying to figure out what's going on with that. One of the things that you can look at, and I don't personally have access to this test. I can refer people if they want to somebody that does have access to it. But there's a company in Germany that does this very, very specific, very detailed test. And that one runs probably $1,500, I think. So it just depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, how important all of it is to you. And also starting with like those simpler tests and just seeing, is there a problem here?
Yeah, starting with the blood, do you have optimal reference ranges for that omega-3/6 ratio? Like, what are you seeing?
That one, I don't have that offhand in front of me, but it's generally, I think the optimal is around 2-to-1. I could look it up if you give me 1 second. Yeah, between 2-to-1. Yeah.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, where we are for most people is they're somewhere in the 10 to 20-to-1 range, which is way too high.
Yeah.
You want to be careful not to cut out omega-6 altogether, because we need it. It is essential. Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting, there's some other fatty acids. Everybody talks about 6 and 3, but there's also a new one that's just been talked about called omega-15. And there's, or they call it, what do they call it? Fatty 15. So that's a new one that really, so if you look at most of the fatty acids have an even number, but 3 and 15. And then there's one omega-7. So that one comes from sea buckthorn oil. So you need all of those. So, and most of them we get from food. We just don't get them in the right ratios because of the way that we balanced out our diet.
And then we've touched on this a little bit, but what are some diet changes that are going to help to improve the cell membranes?
Well, first of all, if you're going to eat oil, eat the best quality. Don't use it to fry. Definitely don't use it at high smoke point. We talked a little bit about duck fat. I keep a pretty good stash of duck fat in my refrigerator. I still don't, I'm really trying to cut back on fried foods, because I think in general, our body's just not really designed to process it properly. So anything that gets crispy, it's no fun, right? Anything that gets crispy or brown, it's producing something called acrylates, which are not ideal for your body and can definitely impact your cell quality.
And what about the air fryer? What's your take on that?
I like my air fryer. I think it's better than, frying with oil. I use my air fryer really without any oil.
Yeah.
So you don't get the same quality, it's not the same as making French fries and spraying it with a little oil and putting it in the air fryer, but they still come out pretty good. And, also just kind of getting out of that habit of eating things that way. I like things crispy and crunchy, just like everybody does. So, kind of trying to find a balance. And the other thing is, I was reading about, there's this guy, Brian Johnson, who is a 45-year-old billionaire, and he's trying to optimize his body to get it to every organ in his body down to like a 20 to 25-year-old range. But, he eats like a purely vegan diet. He only eats certain times of the day. He only eats certain foods. I feel like to me, that's too much. I think that you have to have a little bit of balance and a little bit of joy and a little bit of enjoyment in your life if you want to have a good life. And what good is it to live to be 100 if you're not having any fun?
Right. Food's meant to be enjoyed. Yeah. My he's really into the air fryer. I don't really necessarily, he really craves that because, we don't do gluten and dairy. He kind of will crave more of the fried side of things, or he misses that. And I'm like, I don't mind it, but I would like to have, because it's funny, we were talking the other day, if you could, because we've been doing dairy and gluten. So what you could have more, I'm like, I would have more desserts and he would have more cheese.
Right.
But I'm like, I don't have as many like the crazy cravings we used to have as you start to take out those allergens,
Right.
and then you know your body's craving something because it's
Well,
addicted to
that
it.
might also be the butyrate.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely, totally different subject, but it is part of the protocol. If you do the lipid replacement protocol, it's part of the protocol to use the so there's a couple of things that go in the protocol. So there's the phosphatidylcholine,
Okay.
super purified phosphatidylcholine. There's something called balance oil that Body Bio makes, and that one is actually an omega-6, omega-3 balanced oil. And then they recommend butyrate and they recommend TUDCA.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
the only thing about the TUDCA is I would have to look because I cannot remember if that's all the other stuff is safe to take when you're prenatal, pregnant. I'm not sure about the TUDCA. I'd have to look at it. I know there's
We've
another
used TUDCA,
company.
so we've used TUDCA and so our protocols. Obviously, there's periods
Yeah.
we don't want people to try to conceive, so depending on what's happening there,
Right.
but we've used that.
But so Body Bio's TUDCA is vegan. The other company that I know of that makes TUDCA, theirs is not vegan.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the vegan one is supposed to be safer for prenatal, but again, that would be something that you would want to discuss with whoever your practitioner is, just to make sure that they think it's okay for you to take.
Okay, so and then just talk a little bit about the butyrate. So I listened to the Body Bio. She was on another one of my favorite podcasts I listened to, Luke's Story.
Yeah.
She did a whole like deep dive into
Right.
her products, and I guess it was her grandfather's company and
Mhm.
generations and things like that. And so talked about the butyrate and how that is beneficial for brain fog and just your overall health and mitochondria. I don't have the exact details on why I decided to get it, but at the time, I was like, I need to get this for my husband for brain fog and things like that. But okay, so let's just go through the protocol again there. So talk about that again. So there was 4 of them. So you said, so just kind of
Right. So there's the phosphatidylcholine.
Right.
Sorry. There's the phosphatidylcholine. There's a balance oil.
Okay, the balance.
Okay. Yeah. There's the TUDCA and the butyrate.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And butyrate, I have taken their butyrate. I'm not currently taking their butyrate. There's a new product that's on the market now that helps your body actually make its own butyrate. Mm-hmm. So while I think it can be beneficial to take butyrate, it also can be pretty stinky.
Yeah, that's what people say on the butyrate. She was talking about that in the podcast. I didn't really notice any of that, to be honest.
I think it's not true for everyone, but for some people it can be really stinky, especially as your body's starting to get used to it. So butyrate is one of the short chain fatty acids. So it is a fatty acid. So that's why it's part of the lipid replacement. And ideally what you want to do is get your body to make it itself. So the way that you do that is you have to make the gut environment happy for the Akkermansia, which is the bacteria that produces a lot of the butyrate. It's not the only one. There's another one called Clostridium butyricum. And I'm trying to think, there's one other one. So there's a couple of different bacteria in the gut that produce that butyrate. And they also produce the 2 other short chain fatty acids, which are propionate and acetate. And what you want, again, it's all about a balance. You want more butyrate than propionate. Most people produce the other way around. They produce more propionate and don't produce very much butyrate. And then acetate is actually kind of the base short chain fatty acid, and your body can make butyrate out of acetate. So you want those short chain fatty acids. And it's interesting because when they looked at, for example, children with epilepsy, what they found is that if they supplemented them with butyrate, that their epilepsy got better. So we know definitely that butyrate has a beneficial impact on the brain. That we definitely know. I don't know that anybody's really looked at it regarding fertility. I didn't really study that, but my guess is that it probably does have a beneficial impact on that as well. So what we're finding is that a lot of people just don't really produce a lot of butyrate and don't actually have a lot of Akkermansia. So that's another test that people can run, is the GI map is a good test for looking at what bacteria you have in the gut. and whether those bacteria are helping you or hurting you when it comes to producing adequate cell walls.
Yeah, we run the GI map and we regularly see, obviously we're specializing in fertility, we regularly see the Akkermansia low. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then the staph and the strep are too high, and
parasites and H. pylori and all the rest of it. So it's like you can't outrun the infections. It's like take some time to to address those, and because you can eat the
right.
pristine diet, but if you haven't addressed the infections, then you're gonna run into problems. And the health of the gut's highly tied to the health of the ovaries.
Right. So there is a company now that's making a probiotic that's called Butyricum. So and they have one that makes just butyrate, and they have another one that does butyrate, and then it helps to produce GLP-1.
Okay.
So GLP-1 is going to help you with your blood sugar. Mm-hmm. So, and then the other thing is that your body needs these polyphenols. So taking butyrate is great, but it's also helpful to take the polyphenols.
Just talk about GLP-1 and why that's such a hot topic right now for.
Well, it's interesting because GLP-1 is responsible for maintaining your body fat at a certain level, and it's responsible for helping you to have a good muscle to body fat ratio. So the reason that it's a hot topic is because of Ozempic and I think Mounjaro, and there's semaglutide. All of those are GLP-1 activators. So, but there's a lot of other ways to impact the GLP-1 to make it more, to make it balance out properly. And ultimately, those drugs were produced to help people with diabetes. So they help you manage your blood sugar, which obviously is ideal in a prenatal woman. You really want to have that balanced blood sugar because that's going to help you achieve the most likely fertility. So, but there's other ways to impact that GLP-1, and it's interesting because what we're looking at is that it helps some people lose weight. Not everyone loses weight on the GLP-1 activators. So, and then, so it helps people lose weight. It helps people balance out their body fat and their muscle. It helps balance your blood sugar. And ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to decrease your risk of metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is one of those things that ultimately you just don't want. It is probably the number one killer in the United States for sure, and probably the world. Although there's parts of the world where they wish they had those problems. I agree, that's true. But for the industrialized world, probably metabolic syndrome is the number one killer. So we want to avoid that. But also metabolic syndrome, I think, it's one of the things that is a big problem with PCOS is that a lot of the people with PCOS develop metabolic syndrome very early in life. And so anything that's going to control that metabolic syndrome is going to help you with better fertility, better egg quality, better sperm quality if you're a man.
Yeah, and I've got an episode coming up all on the Ozempic and all that piece. It's coming out soon. Okay, and how long would you say they'd be on the protocol here for the lipid replacement? What are you seeing?
So the problem with the lipid replacement is that it takes a little bit of time for people to amp up to a place where they tolerate it. The worse your cells look, the less you're able to tolerate it. And then for a lot of people that do have, like you said, mold or chronic fatigue, they just don't tolerate a lot of phosphatidylcholine. So for those people, you're going to start them out on a very low dose. And often they'll start on like literally drops to begin with. So it takes a little bit of time to get up to the recommended dose, which is 2 tablespoons a day. And I know for me, I've been taking 1 teaspoon for about 3 weeks now. And I will tell you that in the beginning, that was not even, and I don't have mold or any of that stuff, I did go through, last year I was pretty sick, and this has been me trying to get my body back to its like normal state of health. Because last year I was in the hospital, 4 or 5 times. I had major surgery. So, and it's interesting because my cholesterol shows it. So just to to be detoxing my body, I've been doing the lipid replacement, and I'm taking 1 teaspoon a day. And that the first few days, I definitely was tired. I was not headachy the first week, but the second week I was a little headachy. It definitely made my stool a little bit loose. I think that's to be expected when you drink oil. I don't think that's unusual. Um, but I'm kind of staying steady on that 1 teaspoon, and I'm just definitely starting already to feel better. My blood pressure's down a little bit. Um, I just feel, and I'm sleeping like I have never slept this well in my life. Never slept this well in my life. I'm starting to get like, I have an Aura ring, and I've been starting to get like sleep and what's the other test that they have in there? But I'm in the 90s.
Oh, the HRV, yeah. Yeah.
No, my HRV is like in the 40s, but for my age, 40 is pretty good. I'd like to see it a little higher, but given everything that went on last year, I'm happy with 40.
There you go. And then
So
are you taking all the other ones along with it, or you're just taking
I
them?
am taking all the other ones along with it. Yeah. So I'm just taking a different butyrate because this other one is less sticky.
Yeah, she talks about that.
Yeah.
That's stickiness. Okay, and so then there's a free that you have a lipid replacement guide they can get. Can you just kind of talk about what that is and where they can find it?
So I gave you the link, but it's on my website, and it's drmessere.com/free-gift. So it should be pretty easy to find. And what's going to be there is a guide for how to go about doing this, what kind of dietary things that you should be doing with it, where you can get the products, and where you can get the testing, and what you should be looking for.
Great. Any final thoughts?
If people want more information than that, they can definitely reach out to me.
Great. We'll have the link to the free gift in the show notes. And any final thoughts for us today?
No, I think this is something that I'm pretty excited about, the lipid replacement. And if you look at the research they've been doing this research for a long time. Some of the products that they originally used the research in are not available, just I think because the companies didn't keep going with it. But Body Bio has been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. And there are some other places that you can get the products. It doesn't have to be from Body Bio. But when I looked at their products and how purified they are, and how the company in general runs, I really felt like it was a good company. There are some other ways, like I said. I mean, some people just take lecithin. I think you can do that, but I think that lecithin is going to be a much slower, much less efficient way to do it.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you. This is very informative.
Thanks.